So, welcome, thank you for coming. Welcome to the launch of the 2022 Manchester Anthology. I'm Daniel Whelan. I am one of the authors of the book that you now hold in your hands. Tonight, you are going to be hearing from 12 of the 17 authors. There will be an interval in the middle. Don't worry, you will have a chance to refill your glass. Tonight, you're going to hear some prose and poetry. You're going to hear some fiction, some non-fiction, and some stuff that's in between. Some of the pieces are funny, and some of them are sad. Some of them, some of you may find upsetting. We have two pieces in particular, one that concerns the loss of a pregnancy, and another that concerns the violent abuse of a child. So if either of these things are something that might bother you, please excuse yourself, we won't be offended. So before I get our first reader out, we have a very special guest speaker. He is a wonderful novelist. He is a professor here at the University of Manchester. He is a great teacher, and he is also the author of the foreword for the 2022 Manchester Anthology. Ladies and gents, please put your hands together for Ian McGuire.
Hello, hi, thank you, Daniel, thank you, everybody. Well, what a great event this is. I mean, it's always wonderful at this point every year to gather together with people who are coming to the end of the MA and also people who are beginning, and just to sort of look back over what's happened and then to look forward about what's coming next. So first of all, I just wanted to give some congratulations. Congratulations to everyone who is responsible for this wonderful publication, for everything in it, and also for the fantastic way that it looks. It really is terrific. So I know Bryn, Daniel, and Maddie were particularly involved, but I know there are other people, so I just want to make sure everyone here is thanked. So thanks to Bryn, Maddie, and Daniel, and Louisa, Emma, Francesca, Joshua, and Charlie, and Hannah and Tom as well. Brilliant work, all of you. It's really terrific. I know it's hard work, and they're probably frustrating moments, to say the least, but you've got it, and it looks great. So well done. I also want to just say thanks and congratulations to everyone who is finishing after 1 year or 2 years on the program with us, so who is graduating in December. So thank you for your energy, for your enthusiasm, for your work, for everything you've brought to the workshops, because, of course, the Centre for New Writing is nothing without the students. And our classes are nothing without the energy and the vigor and the ideas and the fun that you bring to them. So thank you very much for that. I hope everyone feels that during their year or 2 years here, they've learned things that are valuable, that are useful, that they will take with them. Not only bits of knowledge about themselves, about writing, but also I hope habits of reading and habits of writing that you will continue practicing after you've officially graduated from here. Because one sad piece of news I have to tell you is that the process of learning how to write doesn't ever end. Even if you think you know how to write one book, you can be sure that the next book is going to throw up a whole different set of challenges that you have no clue how to address. So it doesn't end, but that's the excitement as well as the challenge. So you should look forward to that, and I hope you will carry on with the things you have started here, and that you will keep contact with us, because we love to know what you're doing, what your successes are, what your challenges are, where you are. So please keep in touch with us as you go on out into your writing life. Okay, now we're going to hear some readings from some of the brave people who have volunteered. So I don't know who's first, but thank you, everybody, and I'm really looking forward to hearing it.
Thank you, Ian. So, to kick us off, please welcome Tom Guy.
Good evening. Allow me to set the tone for the evening early on. Getting an erection in public is, at best, impractical. Being 11 years old, on a school trip, in the theatre watching Cinderella and getting an erection is frankly mortifying, especially when the only person on stage is Buttons. I was in year 6, and therefore not completely ignorant of anatomy and sex. In the classroom, PSHE lessons had taught me that when a man has sex with a woman, his penis gets hard. In the changing rooms at swimming club, teenagers had taught me, between horrifying displays of pubic hair, that a blowjob was when a woman put a man's penis in her mouth. Whether that was hard or not, and for what purpose, I didn't really know. Okay, so I had the basics. Why the fudge did I have an erection looking at Buttons then? I put it down to the excitement of the panto. Like the other boys in my class, I had sat cross-armed and sullen on the bus. Spider-Man 3 was at the cinema, and when the teachers promised a trip to the theatre, we had convinced ourselves we were seeing Tobey Maguire in action. Cinderella at the Birmingham Hippodrome, then, was a grave disappointment. I listened to My Chemical Romance on my Sony Ericsson and looked out of the window for most of the journey. However, 20 minutes and a bottle of Coca-Cola into the performance, I was booing and hissing at the Wicked Stepsisters as if Alex Ferguson and Gary Neville had walked on stage. It was fun, and being able to shout as loud as you wanted with your teachers present was not a novelty lost on me. And then Buttons walked, nay, floated onto stage, splendid in his blue jacket, rosy cheeks and golden buttons glowing in the spotlight. "Hello," he cried, waving his white-gloved hand. "Hello," I roared back, louder than everyone else around me. I had a sudden urge to tell everyone that he was my friend, my cousin, that I knew this man, this genius. He began a monologue about Cinderella, and what the hell was this? My penis felt strange. I looked around frantically, terrified somebody would notice the minuscule lump in my jeans. I told a teaching assistant I needed the toilet and waddled up the steps to the bathroom, looking as though I'd already had the accident. I went into a cubicle, locked the door, yanked my trousers and pants to my ankles. Nothing unusual. The erection had gone. Hang on, was that a... No. Piece of fluff. No pubic hair. I peed, eyeing my penis as though it were a small but dangerous beast, not to be trusted. I gave the little rascal a stern look before zipping up. I wasn't sure what it was up to, but I didn't like it. I returned to my seat and tried to be calmer. It was the coke and the shouting that had made me feel funny, I told myself. However, every time Buttons appeared, my heart would beat harder and my stomach would churn and fizz. On the bus home, I sat next to Maisie. She's a barrister now. Riding on the romance of Cinderella, she took my hand. "I fancy you," she said. "Why?" "You're tall, and you're the best at football, and cricket, and tennis," I pointed out. "Yeah. Do you fancy me?" "Yes," I said, and I did. She planted a kiss on my cheek. I was surprised and flattered, and oh, sweet Jesus, I had another erection. I did not know the word bisexual then. I still don't fully understand it now. Thank you. Please welcome Francesca Weekes.
Hello. This is a poem called "What Is There to Write About Except Teenage Longing?" On the astroturf at secondary school, skinning my knee, and Tess sitting with me, strawberry blonde hair in a high ponytail. Or maybe it was another time we didn't get to play football, meant to be laying out cones for the Year 7's football. Listening to her talk about her boyfriend's semen, which sometimes tasted of strawberries. Emptying the black plastic bits out of my trainers again when I got home. I can't say I've ever thought of strawberries like that, but I wanted to look like Tess, the kind of girl who did. I liked her body in the little tank tops she wore. Surely my legs were longer than hers. Surely everybody else's body was just fine, and mine was wrong. Bits of school sticking to the greys on my knee. I guess all formative moments happened at parties, but did not belong to me. My first kiss with a friend who'd already had hers, so it wasn't special. Lying back on wet grass that marked my elbows. Very British to binge drink, no cathartic plunge in an outdoor pool, at someone's rich aunt's house, looking ethereal. Never thought I'd get a tattoo, but the smiley face on my knee visible now when I wear shorts. Strong legs that don't play football anymore. I'm running to meet my friends. I'm learning kickflips. Bleaching the grass stains out of jeans I didn't like at 15. Thank you. Next up we have Dipika Mummery.
Hello. I'm going to read from the opening to my novel, This Burning World. And in this chapter, the main character, Neela, has just come out of a crucial meeting at work. She works for a law firm in Manchester. The meeting was a success, but she doesn't feel very well towards the end of it. There was a stranger in the mirror with glassy, dark brown eyes and lank strands of hair escaping from her chignon. That morning, she had carefully made up her face with a small amount of concealer and a dusting of powder, but her light brown skin now bore a sickly pale sheen. Her mouth was half open, as if she was about to scream. She clamped it shut, turned, and staggered into a cubicle. She looked. There was blood, but it hadn't seeped through her clothes yet. Somehow, she managed to use the tampon. Then she used a pad too. She dry swallowed 2 pills and slowly walked back to her desk. The office had emptied out. There were only a few colleagues from another team clustered around a monitor at the other end of the room, their faces ghost-like in the screen's white glare. Perhaps everyone else had gone for a drink to celebrate. She was supposed to be there too, with Arash, everyone congratulating them. She opened her inbox, clicked on an email and tried to read it, but she didn't get past the first line without wincing. She logged off. What was this? It couldn't be period pain. Her thoughts skittered around the whispering voice, returning to its impossible words, then bouncing away, over and over. She couldn't listen to it. Not now, not at work. Later, at home. She searched for her car keys, then remembered. They'd got the train into Manchester so they could both have a few drinks later. Well, on the train then. She would look it up on her phone on the train. And when she got off at East Disbury, she would get a taxi home. The pain pulsated harder, rampaging up and down the left side of her body. The ibuprofen hadn't done a thing. She gathered her things, rehearsing what she would say to Arash when she called him. It was a bad period. He knew she got them sometimes. They would have to celebrate the win together another time. He would be disappointed, though. She checked her phone as she stood. There was a message. Hurry up before we drink all the champagne. She tried to type out a reply in the lift. The letters didn't make sense. She sent it anyway, just as the doors opened. Then she almost walked into someone coming out of the opposite lift. Sorry, she tried to say, but it came out as a small whisper. "Excuse me," she said to the woman sitting behind the desk in the foyer. She had to lean on the desk to keep herself upright. The floor-to-ceiling windows behind reception were dark, but Neela could see something bright and harsh through the windows to her right. Just Christmas lights, she thought, but she had to briefly close her eyes and turn away from the entrance. She tried to keep her gaze on the woman's face. Glasses framed by blonde hair, bright pink blusher, crinkly eyes, a familiar face. She sat behind the desk every evening. Neela tried to remember her name, but nothing came past the agony. The woman looked at her, her polite smile fading. "Are you all right?" she asked. She stood up and brought a radio to her mouth, but Neela couldn't tell what she was saying. Everything was so far away, disappearing in a haze of pain. There was something sticky between her thighs. The fabric of each leg of her tights slips over each other too easily. "Oh," she thought. Her ears rang faintly. The pain pulsated up her back. Then all went black. Thank you. I would now like to welcome Osman Mohamed to the stage.
Just adjust this. Hello? Yeah, sounds good. So tonight I'll be reading an extract from a short story called Instead. My bastard of a brother is getting married in 2 days' time. I know. What a hideous word to use. Married. Why on earth would anyone get married? He's the one to answer the front door of my mother's flat, wearing a linen shirt, even though it's autumn, and shapeless blue jeans. We don't hug, nor do we shake hands, and I brace myself for all the vacuous small talk of a hospital waiting room. "Hello," he says, completely impassively. He comes to just below my shoulder and seems to grow wider each time that I see him. His eyes are fixed at a point to my left. "How's everything?" "Good, yeah," I reply. He nods and leads the way to the living room. I live about 2 hours from my mother's flat. As soon as I could, I moved across the city. I tried to visit every few months, on a Friday afternoon, because that's when my brother is praying at the local mosque. He still lives at home, you see. He's 25, 5 years younger than me, and still living here, so I tried to visit when he's out of the house, to avoid him at all costs. No such luck today. It's a Thursday, and I've had to take 2 days off work because, as mentioned, my bastard brother is getting married this weekend. It's such an effort. I'm nursing a colossal hangover from work drinks, and the old teenage feeling of hiding it from my mother is returning to me. I try to hold the stale, sour smell in to keep my mouth shut. Keeping my mouth shut is probably good advice for me to follow today anyway. In the living room, my brother sits on the sofa beside his fiancée, Samira. They both face the bulk of my mother, who is laughing her familiar throaty, choking laugh, while Samira giggles along appreciatively. They quiet down as I enter. "Ali," I hear them say together. They hug me, one after the other, my mother wiping leftover tears of laughter. I sit in the empty, straight-back wooden chair. The silence blankets us. After a while, my mother, who else, breaks it. "This is nice, isn't it?" she says, rather uselessly, in an oddly formal tone. Has the phrase "this is nice" ever successfully removed awkwardness from a room? It does nothing of the sort this morning. Thank you. Now, please welcome to the stage Charlie J. Rigg.
Not quite that tall. This is an extract from a short story called Idolatry, and it was one of 3 which are not quite love stories. Father Fairchild moved smoothly into the room, passing the flashing lights and blinking monitors to a vast tank of pale green liquid. Inside was a man. His skin was black, his hair darker than jet, each cheek brushed with fluttering lashes and 3 beads of scar tissue. The body was finely corded with sinuous muscle, the shoulders strong, the back curved like a bow, almost fetal. Father Fairchild followed the lines of his body until he came to the shoulder blades, marred by two large twisted bumps which continued on and on into 6 pairs of white wings. All of him, limb, body, wing, was covered in slow blinking eyes. They all swiveled at once to fix on Father Fairchild. Are not all angels ministering spirits sent to serve those who will inherit salvation? The creature opened its human eyes. Immediately, images flooded Father Fairchild's mind. Plush lips pressed desperately to thighs, the salty taste of sweat and skin, bodies moving in rhythm, the wet slide of hands and fingers, and the needy voice rising out of his chest like a prayer. More, more, more. The images stopped. Father Fairchild sagged back to reality as though dropped from a great height, his breath ragged, his heart hammering. The creature opened its mouth. Do you know me? Father? Mira's voice was concerned, but Father Fairchild paid little attention. His hand moved into a shaky cross. Do you know me? Father Fairchild, what is it talking about? It's human, Mira, he said, voice almost a whisper. Not like a human. Human. Do you know me? Yes, he breathed. I know you. Father Fairchild was a man who wanted, and before he had wanted influence and power and God's love, he had wanted Freddie Wise. And now here he was, turned into this. He pulled himself up, tentative, and laid a hand against the glass. The creature mirrored him. Freddie, he whispered. Hello, Harry. Thank you. And next up, we've got Louisa Ashton with her wonderful piece.
I'm going to be reading an extract from, I'm going to leave it there, from a novel that's a work in progress called Build Her with Green. I stopped by the cottage front. The lawn was long outside the small house, overgrown with wild grasses and white puffs of dandelion seed heads. A lawn gone wild was a sign, like hanging a note on the front door saying, gone to lunch, indefinitely. I pushed open the side gate to the garden, and despite the creak of the hinges, you remained unflinching, standing in the middle of the lawn with your back to me. It was quiet. I briefly surmised that your parents and neighbours had succumbed to one of the earlier waves, and you were left here alone. It could happen like that. Later that day, when we walked the rooms of the cottage together, my suspicions would be confirmed. I had become quite good at reading the debris left behind. I watched you, small legs and long grass. You were beginning to sway ever so gently. In front of you grew a silver birch, standing far higher than the neighbouring hawthorns. Full and thick with new leaves, the birch's shadow laid itself like cloth across the lawn, reaching over you and around you, making you seem as tiny as a 6-year-old. But there was something in the calm and slow restraint of your sway that made me think you were more like 8 or 9. Behind you was a small, freshly dug mound of soil. A hand trowel lay discarded beside it, and that's when I became fully aware of the soil stains along the hem of your dress. You had been digging. We breathed like this for a while, your back to me, my eyes to you. Slowly, you began to raise your arms, reaching out, fingertips searching, probing the air. Then I saw. Your hands glistened a thick vermilion red. I thought that maybe you'd been painting, but later I saw the remains of a large cat in the kitchen sink. Your head rose towards the leaf-dripping fingers of the silver birch. In turn, your hands, rouge wet and shining, began to droop from the wrists and swayed with your breath, matching the stir of the birch's hanging branches. I realized this was not a game. You were not playing, tree. You were studying, practicing. The lilacs were in full bloom, waving over the dead stems of the headless bluebells. Thrusting through the overgrown lawn were the yellow, almost orange faces of dandelions. And in the shade of the silver birch stood you, my little robin, swaying alone, dripping crimson meat amongst the green. And this might have been it. This might have been the moment I decided I would turn you into a plant.
So I am going to read for you now. This is from a thing called The Gods of Gwynfa Road. For the first time in nearly 200 years, Dai Clocks had a cold. The last time it had happened, during the reign of Queen Victoria, he had not needed to bother his scrying glass until long after he had recovered. That had been a boom town for the seaside town to which he had retired shortly after the Great Fire of London. But his situation was different now. He had bills to pay. He had been granted an extraordinarily long life in exchange for his services as an oracle, but he had not been given a fortune to match. So it was that he dragged himself from his bed before dawn and slipped on the ceremonial robe, a garment which had been pleasingly cool in the Mediterranean climes of his youth, but was barely better than nudity on the North Wales coast during what the people nowadays insisted on calling the 21st century. He sighed, ran a hand through his dyed black quiff, put his spectacles on, and made his way down the stairs through his shop, where the reassuring ticks of dozens of watches kept beautiful, precise time, and out through the icy cold yard to his workshop. Dai Clocks was not his real name, of course, but a nickname earned over time. He'd given up pointing out it was wrong, though it pained him still. He was a watchmaker, and accuracy was important to him. He'd never fixed a clock in his life. He let himself into the little shed, flicked on the tiny electric heater by the door, and sat at his workbench. He carefully cleared away the dead and dying watches awaiting his attention and slid open the long middle drawer. He took out the scrying glass, thin and flat and as dirty and irregular as a frozen puddle, and placed it on the bench. He took a deep breath and rubbed his hands together before stretching them out over the glass. "Right then," he said, in the thick, nasal North Walian accent he'd picked up over the centuries. "Let's see now." And then he sneezed. Droplets of snot sprayed over the surface of the stone. "Gods damn it," he said. He shook his head, pulled the sleeve of his robe over his hand, and wiped the glass clean. Then he reached out over it once more, and in the most sonorant voice he could muster on 2 lemsips, chanted, "Open, gaping void of chaos, open, for Kronos, eternal lord of time, hath granted me the right to eternal sight, and I demand to see all that will be." He fished around inside his robe and pulled out a crumpled, beer-stained piece of paper. He squinted at it in the poor light. "Specifically, the winner of the 3:30 at Chester and the final score at Keffin Druids versus New Saints on Tuesday week. Oh, and any 5 of the winning numbers for Wednesday's lottery." Dai Clocks was not a greedy man, but watchmaking was not a lucrative business. Thank you. And now it is my absolute pleasure to welcome Mr. Joshua Weekes.
Hello, everyone. So, for clarity, this is from the perspective of a 4-year-old girl. I'm not going to be doing an impression of a 4-year-old girl. So, imagine my voice as a 4-year-old girl. Lydia opened her eyes and smiled. The blue morning sunshine was peeking under her dinosaur curtains and onto her face, warming up her cold cheekies. She wiggled her nose like Peter Rabbit, giggled, and hugged Teddy Dinosaur tight. "Did you sleep okay?" she asked him. He had. "Good." She patted him on his little head. "Time to get up then." Teddy Dinosaur agreed. Lydia kicked down her covers and shot right up without a yawn or a stretch. She stood on top of her pink bed and posed like Supergirl, making her thinking face. What to do first? Blip! Drippy drops, she said, bouncing her legs. One, then two, she grabbed her dinosaur curtains with both handies and marched along her bed to open them. Left, right, left, right. She turned and saluted Teddy Dinosaur, and then plonked her handies down onto her windowsill. Please be snow, please be snow. She looked down over her concrete garden and up and out at the grassy field with the playtime park sitting in the middle of it. No snow, not even a sprinkle. Never mind. We can still go out on the swings after school, she said to Teddy Dinosaur. He liked the sound of that. Not at night time, though. That's when the noisy men with their ciggies are there. Lydia pretended to suck on a ciggy and blow out smoke, just like Mummy did. Blip! Oh, drippy drops. Lydia rolled her eyes. Silly me, so forgetful. The drippy drops were all snuggled up in the bottom corner of her bedroom window like bubble wrap. She pointed her pointy finger to make a spear, stomped her middle finger twice, and made a neigh-neigh noise. Charge! She galloped her handy at the drippy drops. Jab, 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 pop, pop, pop. The drippy drops burst and fell, wriggling down to their doom. She pressed her pointy finger into one and dragged it down onto the windowsill, mixing it into the spilt compost. Mummy says the compost was mold, but she doesn't know what she's talking about. Squawk, squawk, squawk. A black shadow flew past Lydia's bedroom window, making her jump and slip onto her bottom. She pulled a frowny face and picked herself back up. Noisy birds. Slowly, she looked out of her window and saw a big fat crow sitting on Bob next door's back fence. It had a sassy look on its face. Squawk? Naughty crow. Shush. Lydia slapped her fingers to her lips. She froze. It burned. It burned from her mouth and down to her chin and did nasty tingles along her jaw. Everything under her cheekies beat like when she was bleeding, like when everything around a cut throbbed and ached. She remembered last night, Daddy's angry face, his angry fist coming towards her. He'd hit her, he'd wanted to hurt her. Lydia's legs turned wobbly, and the lump that meant she was going to cry appeared in her throat. Don't cry, be a big girl. She sniffled. Gently, she touched her lip. If there was bleeding, then she needed to clean it before Mummy saw. She thought it would feel wet straight away, but it didn't. Dry. She checked her finger. Nothing. Why is it still hurting? She touched around again. Just underneath her lip, there was a small ball, like a spot, that felt more like a Smartie. She pressed it lightly, and her handy squeezed into a fist. It stung like a bee sting. Swollen. Mummy's going to get mad. She's not going to let me go to school. Lydia's chest went even tighter, like something was sitting on it, and she breathed faster and faster, so loud that she could hear her breaths echoing around her bedroom. She didn't want to touch the Smartie anymore, but the throbbing wouldn't stop. She could tell the Smartie wasn't what was making the throbbing, though. Don't be scared. You need to find what the throbbing is. Then you can fix it. Thank you. And I would now like to introduce Madeline Hoffman, who will be reading a poem, I believe.
This is response to the distance I can be from my son after Linka Clayton's poem by the same name. Not poem, different piece. If I were to have a son, I would watch him toddle down a field in a white cap, a flag against the rolling hills of green, picked just for him, which he sidesteps, heading instead for the trees with shadows holding I don't know what, sending me running down the hills toward this, the danger I can see, the hint of one at least, before which I would scoop my baby up, carrying him back to the open field. Because when you have a baby, you run towards the shadows as soon as you see them. And the hurt that comes, it always comes, is not your fault. If I could have a son, which I can't, I cannot have a son, I would film him running down the grocery aisle when his legs were still clumsy as a colt's, limbs thick, and swaying with hesitation that he would lose as he aged into a boy, spindly and agile, galloping out of sight. Until, because I had a son, his legs would shake as the toddling movements returned, so he would fall sometimes, and then often, and I would know that I chose this for him, as you did not choose for me. You didn't know. You had a son, which I can't, which is to say I shouldn't bring a child into this world knowing the promise of strife put on that child's head. Shouldn't I choose? The alley left to me, the scooping sort of safety offered by my arms and an open field, if I know that safety is a promise I could never keep. Shouldn't I make a different promise, one that comes from the same wellspring of care, one that wants my child to be able to run away from me, into the alley and down the hill to find his own shadows and hurts, to have the hope of an open script without the antagonist already written in. Thank you. Next up, we have Bryn Montgomery Koning reading The Night Nurse.
This is an extract from The Night Nurse. May Vogel sat in room 14 of Archdale Hospice, perched atop a white metal chair, clutching the hand of a dead man. The room was dimly lit with a single fluorescent tube, which flickered occasionally. There was little warmth in the institutional pink walls and spotted linoleum, and the window looking out to the garden was the inky black of nighttime away from city lights. There was a red knitted tissue box cozy and a battered copy of 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea on the bedside table, but these did not amount to much of a homey touch. May felt some sorrow for the passing of patients. It was her custom to sit with her dead for 5 minutes, hand in hand, before tucking the patient's arm under the blanket and calling for an orderly. Mr. Maloney was emblematic of the majority of Archdale residents. When the knowledge and skills of the medical field hit a hill they could not summit, where the patients were sent here, where what was left of their life was managed by doctors, nurses, and orderlies, a waiting room for death. The orderly on duty most nights was Habib. He was a tall, compassionate man who moved so quietly he frequently startled staff by appearing in what they were certain only a moment ago had been empty air. May liked Habib's quiet way. She generally didn't startle. May tidied the room before pressing the large blue button that would summon Habib. A moment after she settled back into her chair, May felt Habib's large hand on her shoulder. Though only now aware of his presence, she simply turned to face him and announced, "Mr. Maloney has passed." Habib nodded, but did not look towards the body. Instead, he watched Nurse May's face with an expression of concern. I must look pale, May thought. He crouched down to meet her eyes, his hands coming up to rest on her shoulders. "Are you okay?" he asked. "Why don't you have a cup of tea in the break room? Have a small rest. I'll help Mr. Maloney." "No. He's my patient. I'll see him off properly." She looked away towards Mr. Maloney, distancing herself from Habib. She reached up to pat the hand on her shoulder, thanking him for his concern. "As you like," he said, and released her, moving to uncover Mr. Maloney. They worked slowly, carefully removing the medical tape from his skin, disconnecting all the machines that had monitored his vitals. Mr. Maloney had a Foley catheter and a PICC line, which they left in, to be removed at the funeral home after his body had been examined, before being made ready for, as per Mr. Maloney's wishes, cremation. The idea of death without a trace had appeal for May. Mr. Maloney would be reduced to ash and scattered to the wind. There would be nothing tangible left for the living or the dead to hold on to. May felt the absence of life in Mr. Maloney keenly, the lack of soul. It was a corpse to her now, though it was warm to the touch, the flesh still malleable, its limbs easy to articulate. When they had finished, Habib took the empty vessel away, leaving May behind to finish the paperwork that came with the end of life at Archdale. It wouldn't be long before she was filing it away, leaving a fluorescent sticky note for Mary on the day shift to contact next of kin. She had completed more than half the paperwork the previous day. May did not think herself alone in room 14. Mr. Maloney was not gone. She felt his presence, not in memory or in her heart, but as a spirit attached to her own. These spirits were the reason she attended their funerals, the reason she spoke to the people they left behind. This was her duty of care, her release. When May left this world, she had it written down that everything, from her flesh to her desk to each and every frilly white nightgown, was to be burned. Those cultures that burned the dead's possessions, even homes, had the right way of thinking. Much more sense than those others that hoarded treasures around the body to tie the dead in place. Bridget called that talk nonsense. She had always pushed May to step away from death. She said the dead had better things to do. May knew better than to listen. She knew Bridget had exorcised her own ghost in a different way. Thank you. And I would like to welcome to the stage Shekinah Rose.
Sex, Lies and Slugs. I'm 10 years old. It's a grey and rainy Tuesday evening and getting dark outside. I storm into Mum's bedroom, and without switching on the lights, I begin to snoop through her drawers. I rummage through her socks, push my hands around her soft tights, her satin pajamas, all the boring bits. I'm seeking something else, something better. My fingers touch the black, webbed underwear that she's squashed in the back of the drawer. I pull it out with one finger. Why would anyone wear anything so full of holes? Gross. I place the holy thing back in the drawer, continue to slide my hands around her clothes against the hard wood, feeling for something, anything. My hands find a small pink metallic pill packet filled with tiny round pills. Each pill, a new day of the week. I feel sick in my tummy. I will ask Mum about these later. I chuck the pills back in the drawer, continue to rummage. I'm startled by the feeling of something firm and papery against my knuckles. I touch it with my fingertips, realizing it's a book. I pull it out, my heart beating. On its front is a painted picture of a naked woman. The word erotica. The woman's boobs are huge, even bigger than Mum's, and they spill out onto her stomach, which she's pulling in, but it still looks flabby. She has dark brown lines painted in tiny slug-like shapes over her vagina. Is that hair? Ugh, my knees are trembling. I open the front cover of the book, my whole body burning. Page 1 is a photograph. 2 pale bodies. A man, a woman, skin wet with sweat. She is on her knees. He is standing above her, holding his you-know-what above her face. Yuck, yuck, yuck. I feel a sharp tightening in my chest. Dripping out of his you-know-what is slug slime. White, thick, creamy slug slime. Ugh, I can't breathe. Tears blur the corners of my eyes. I slam the book shut. Through the pattering rain on the window, I hear Mum downstairs, opening the door, softly climbing each step. I throw the book in the drawer. I attempt to close it. Too late. She walks in. What are you doing? She asks. I don't reply. I just stare at her, my cheeks hot. Don't look through my stuff, please, she says, sighing, as she looks at the half-open drawer and the stranded black sock that has decided to give me away. I glare at her, my heart racing. I am not sorry. I am not sorry. I am not sorry. She has ruined my life, I think to myself. I have every right to know everything. What are those pills in your drawer? I ask, a weight in my chest telling me I won't like the answer. Let her stop me getting pregnant, she responds. Matter of fact, confirming that she is disgusting, and she and my not dad Simon are in fact doing it on a regular basis. Their revolting slug-like tongues appear in my head. Slut, I say under my breath, although I don't know what it means exactly. I heard a girl at school say it to another girl in the playground. Don't call me that, she says calmly. She brushes past me and picks up the sock, and I get a whiff of that expensive J'adore perfume Simon got her for her birthday. They are gross, but the smell is delicious. I will spray my entire body with it before school tomorrow. She puts the sock back in the drawer and gently closes it. Tea's ready, she says. I scowl at her and follow her downstairs. She's made sausages and creamy mash. And please welcome to the stage Jennifer Nuttall, who's going to read 2 very beautiful poems.
Here's you, wondrous as you were the day that your mother first conceived of you. 2 arms, 2 legs, 2 hands to hold and touch and feel and know this world which has been waiting centuries to know you. Eyes to see, a tongue to taste, ears to hear, but more than all your senses, a mind, a brain. You are every electrical impulse that is coursing through a rootwork of nerves, a rococo composition of bones and muscles and ligaments and joints and complex chemical compounds, lungs that know how to breathe without you ever having to tell them to, a beating heart that propels your blood through an endless maze of veins. You are tears and love and pain, plagued not by humours or unseen spirits, but by disease and disorder, but so loved that long before your name was ever spoken, we were looking for ways to keep those demons away from you, holding counsel with the universe, asking it what makes you, you, and how to make you stay. Finding galaxies in the lens of a microscope, entire worlds contained within cell samples. You are flesh and sensation and viscera and static, frustration and acid and cellulite, consciousness, capillaries and stardust and substance and essence, hormones and matter and vessels, neurons, vitality and joy, observation, tradition, both cosmos and bile, communication and song and plasma and fat, mineral and fear, mucus and hope, curiosity and inspiration, rediscovery, old invention. You are the universe expanding and folding into a single moment, a unified body, infinitely fascinating and completely human. And we're going to have a change of pace from You Are Amazing to You Are Dinner with Cannibal. Sometimes, though not often enough for it to be of any great concern, I think about eating you. Not because of anything you may have done wrong, and not in the fun way that the rise of your eyebrow tells me you're already thinking of. This poem is not a metaphor for sex. I think about eating you. I consider whether you would be best trussed like a turkey, butter rubbed into the tundra of your skin, or hung in a dry room until you mature like good beef, and then carved and filleted, and all your less desirable parts boiled and baked into pies. I think about eating you. I try to decide which fork is the correct one to use and whether I should serve you with red or white wine. The etiquette guides don't cover this. You would be an occasion for tablecloths, freshly aired and pressed and smoothed out across the table, ready to receive you. I imagine the taste of your tongue served on focaccia with just a smear of mustard and maybe watercress. I picture myself pushing the heel of my palm into your chest until it cracks and splays you, butterflied to roast more evenly. Maybe a herb rub, maybe a stew. You could be both the meat and the stock, and the fat of the dumplings. I think about eating you. I measure chest freezers and ovens online, and I have picked the perfect carving knife. The pantry is stocked with all the accompaniments I think would suit you best. I have even invested in a lobster bib. But, of course, I don't eat you. I prepare this for you. I open my own veins and slice my fingers marbled and paper thin, and you devour me. Thank you. So every year, the PFD prize is awarded to one of our writers who are graduating, and I'd just like to welcome onto stage Kate Evans, who is going to announce the winner for that.
I'm so thrilled to be here tonight. It's so lovely hearing, I got to read a lot of your work ahead of the time, but then there's some of you that weren't in there, and I think just it's so amazing to see your work brought to life with the readings, because it's just, it's really joyful. So I don't know how much you all know about the prize, but we started doing this because as agents we see basically how long the road is. And there's so many people we see who are so talented and have so much potential and are writing these beautiful things, and then you leave an MA and it's hard, you've got to draft and redraft, and then there's a point where you think you hate what you've written and possibly the whole concept of writing collectively. And so we wanted to kind of, start something that isn't about saying, yes, this is sellable right now, or about saying this is what's super, hot, or, going to get everywhere in a year. It's about saying we like what you're doing and keep on that road that is not always easy. So reading everyone's entries this year, it was hard. What a range. I think there are some creative writing prizes, creative writing courses where everything kind of comes out pretty similar. And I think it's a real credit to this MA and to all of you that that's not the case. Each one I was like, wow, a whole new world. That was every genre and every perspective, and I loved that. But the person that we ended up deciding to give this to, it just stuck with me. I was reading it, and then I shared it with a bunch of my colleagues, and they all said the same thing, and it was just tender and thoughtful and a kind of unique perspective. It was at the same time really deeply relatable. So I really hope that this person will keep writing and turn this into a novel, because I suspect it could be something really beautiful. So I'm delighted to give the PFD prize this year to Osman Mohamed. Congratulations. We don't have a thingy, but yeah, just love that. Yeah.
Say something now.
I have nothing. No, I'm not reading. I literally have nothing to say other than thank you everyone on this course, and everyone that has spoken tonight, and I'm genuinely about to cry, so I'm gonna piss off now. Thank you. Also, thank you everyone for being here tonight. 100%. I'll leave it to Daniel.
Okay, so that is it for another year. Just a couple of thank yous to finish on. So, of course, we have to thank all our wonderful tutors at the University of Manchester. Some of you are here tonight. Thank you so much for coming out, supporting and putting up with all of us, because we are a weird and wonderful year. My God, some of the things you've had to read. We are deeply strange people, and we couldn't be prouder of it. Thank you all for coming out. I hope you've had a great night. We would like to ask you to join us at the after show party, which is, thank you, Maddie, at the Old Abbey Tap House, which is just 2 minutes down the road. We can get in there from 9:30. So what I would like you to do between now and 9:30 is drink that bar dry. The University of Manchester have paid for it. I would hate to see it go to waste. So thank you all again, ladies and gents. Oh, there's two other people I need to thank, and that is my co-leads, Bryn Montgomery-Koenig and Maddie Hoffman. This book happened because of them, and if you enjoy it, it is absolutely to their credit, and if you don't, it's my fault. Thank you very much. Good night. Drink.